All
Go
right.
red.
All right.
Oh,
So
got it.
homesteading.
Homesteading. Love it. Yeah.
So refresh my memory, just a little bit about the property that you guys found. How did you find the property?
We were coming out to open up a end-stage cancer treatment facility, but the oncologist, they would not give him a full license, so he declined. So we were living, Trafalgar's a little bedroom community of Rousseau, the capital, and we were staying there. And we began looking for a permanent residence, kind of anticipating, that this is going to turn into that clinic setting. And we were just, probably spent most of our time just driving around the island, going to all the little villages, going up the Atlantic coast and Caribbean. And then, how is it? Oh, the Brent personality. How do we find out? I don't know. The realtor had the listing, and so maybe he just brought it out. And we came out to take a look at it, and I was immediately pretty taken. It's got ponds and rivers and hills, and at that point it had 600 cocos and 1,000 bananas and hundreds of pineapple and macadamia nuts and all the citrus, tangerines and oranges, lemons and limes. It was like, this sounds like the grocery store. Like, I'll just take up a residence in the fruit aisle.
Yeah.
So
And how much land is it?
27 acres.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I mean, there's vast amounts that we never really see. I mean,
Yeah.
parts we go to once or twice a year just to see if the earth has fallen off or something. There's a lot of space out there. The nice part is one of the lot lines is the Lot River, and that's a pretty sizable river with a lot of gorgeous swimming holes. And when we're deserving of a bit of vacation, we trundle out there, and I mean, it's just really, really nice.
How much of the land is cleared for producing food?
A lot more than we can handle. There are, and we actually milled up a couple of trees, and we've been doing quite a bit of construction with that. But there's a lot of hardwood around. I mean, the stuff that even looks like pine, it looks like white pine, man. But you have to pre-drill very close to the nail, or ain't going in. It's like this stuff looks like you could cut it with your thumbnail, but a nail can't pound through it at all.
Huh.
It's very different working, almost 100% with hardwood. Now, there are some 2x4s that were on site that you're occasionally attaching to, but you have to drill through the hardwood before you can pound into the fir.
Are the hardwood trees indigenous to the island?
They're all over the island. I presume they are. I'm sure some of them could have been brought in, particular, types that they wanted to grow. Because they used to do quite a bit of milling here, and then they went to, I think they went to sugarcane or bananas, and from bananas now they're in dasheen, and I'm advocating that the next agricultural endeavor be cannabis, and would like the island to become internationally known as the kind of raw cannabis cuisine. I'd like to get a hold of one of the rum production facilities of very large places where people used to bring the sugar cane in and they would crush it and make rum, but they're gorgeous old stone, beautiful buildings. And I would like to be able to get a hold of one of those and turn it into a cannabis educational facility and restaurant and processing center, and do a little CO2 processing, and because there's the one thing that the island has is a tour, these large vessels carrying 6,000 people. Sometimes there'll be 2 or 3 of them at a time berthed. They'll come in at 6 a.m. and then pull out at 6, and people jump off around the daytime, and they kind of sleep when they go to the next island. So there's a lot of a lot of tourist traffic that I'm hoping to entrap,
Hmm.
or at least entertain and educate. So
Entrance.
that's in trance. Yeah.
And you spoke with the president of the country, you said, yeah, about that.
Yeah, and there's our physician is also, I mean, he's still practicing medicine, but he first became the Minister of Health, and then progressed to Minister of Finance. So he's kind of like second in line behind the Prime Minister, meaning that all the other ministries have to come to him for budgets and allowances and projects and stuff. And the guy is as close to angelic as most human feet ever get. I mean, he's just bright, kind, caring. I mean, just an amazing fellow. And I'm hoping that he will be a central part of the group, one that'll allow access to the other ministers quite easily. And there's another fellow who's written the law books. I think he rewrote a 17-volume set of all the laws of the land and cleaned them up from when Britain was here and got rid of the 50 lashing punishments that were still a matter that were still in print. Yeah, yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. In fact, I was actually subject to those conditions on. I had moved some stones in the river, was accused of moving pilings. They didn't, so it looked like I was interfering with international trade and shipping and commerce. And the neighbor who's got a wild imagination and a lot of contacts, kind of was running me through the mill. And then finally, my attorney smelled the coffee and said, "Well, these pilings you're talking about are not piles of stones. These are concrete piers that hold up docks that ocean-going vessels berth at. And there's none of that going up in the mountains, I can guarantee you." And so suddenly the whole thing was dropped. But it was quite an education, to say the least.
The punishment was gonna be 50 lashes.
Oh, that was part of it. Yeah, that was,
Oh my God.
yeah. I mean, that was in print. I can send you a copy of that stuff.
Oh my God.
So this other guy came through and was, trying to cut all that stuff out, try to get with the century.
Yeah, that's pretty
But there's a grade school here called Massacre.
It's called Massacre.
Massacre, and there used to be a lot of bloodletting and shedding and throwing people down wells, and I mean it was
Wow.
pretty crazy back in the day. Yeah, incredible things. And the kids probably know more about it. I guess it's more I can kind of really imagine. But the idea that it's a grade school called Massacre.
How long has the country been sort of modernized?
Well, I think in the Britain, so France and Britain would own the country alternately, and whoever owned the country, the other nation would say, "Oh, let's get together and have a big party," and so if France held it and Britain wanted it, they'd throw this huge party and pour out a bunch of rum, and all the French guys would drink rum, get drunk, and then they would kill all the French people. Then the British would own it, and it would go back and forth like this often. I mean, maybe every 4 or 5 years, they'd have another party, and the property would turn over, and that went on for quite a while. And then the natives, the Kalinagos, people in general, the Europeans wouldn't go much farther from the coast than 2 miles. They wouldn't venture out of the coastal zone because they were not well received by the native natives. So there's stories there that I can't even imagine in terms of the interactions. So there's a lot of history. But as in 1979, Britain decided they just didn't want to be dumping money, and I guess I don't know if they had harvested all the hardwood they wanted, or the banana crop season or planting had failed, but for some reason they turned it over to the so it was the Commonwealth of Dominica. It was a British holding, and they still kind of hold on to that, even though it's no longer a Commonwealth. It's an independent country.
And that was in 79.
Yeah.
Wow, so just very young.
Yeah.
Wow.
And,
And so the guy that bought the property before you planted a bunch of stuff from, you said from all around the world, all kinds of different fruits that
yeah,
you'd never even heard of before.
and still can't name and recognize. I mean, Kyle's staying with us, and he's got a really high-end modern camera phone, and he can pull photographs and go to Google Plants and try to ID. And there's stuff there that Google Plants can't come up with an
Hmm.
explanation for. But they're obviously fruit, and they're edible and delicious. And they're just weird. I mean, this guy brought in cuttings from all over Central America and Asia and South America and Africa, and brought stuff in. There's pretty much you name it. There's macadamia nuts, bay leaf, all the fruits, citrus fruits. Cocoa, like I said, he was making a couple hundred chocolate bars, and I just don't recall if that was a day or a week. But he had all the tempering, and they were making a lot of chocolate bars. Unfortunately, he sold off all that equipment before we moved in. But,
Did you actually meet him and talk with him about the
yeah,
property?
yeah, definitely. He had gone to Polynesia and was thinking about relocating in Polynesia, and then decided that this wasn't a good match. And then he went back to Connecticut, and they went out somewhere in the Midwest, and I think now he's in Italy. At one point, I think he had 3 wives, but he finally decided that one was a good number, so he got back to man. He tried to be in a single relationship, and I've been eager to track him down and send him photographs, because he was thinking, he was sitting up here. It was pretty wild. I mean, they lived in tents for a couple of years when they got here, and carried the wood in to kind of build the first home. And he built it as if he was still in Connecticut. It has wood shingles on it, and I call it a positive shingle sign when you go out after a storm and the wood shingles are scattered around like frisbees all over the place. You just pick up all the shingles and just kind of stick it back in. I mean, at some point I could switch it over to a metal roof, but it's a little farther down the road.
Hmm. And how many buildings were on the property when you got there?
There were the main house, which has a couple of bedrooms, and then there was another house that he had built up the hill that is his most modern construction. It's got an all metal roof, and it's up on stilts, and it's all hardwood, and it's really gorgeous. It's a little smaller. And then he was in the process of building a third house down by the river that was going to be for one of his daughters who just had a baby, and it's going to be for their family. But they kind of left, the basic framework was up, but we had to come in and put the rafters and a roof on it, but a really robust hardwood structure. Once again, you want to pound something in it, you got to drill a hole. I think that's different.
And was there already electricity?
Yes, he was big into alternatives. So he was the one who put in the hydro screens and ran the water lines down. And micro hydro is a big part of the 24/7, 365 power. And it's just so nice to have hydro. You're not as dependent on trying to store the solar energy throughout the whole night. And if you're, I mean, like right now, I run a circular saw with impunity, and before we got the batteries, you'd have to go over, start the generator, and switch from batteries to generator, and then you could work the circular saw at the chicken coop or the wood shop or someplace. So it was a bit of a nightmare flip-flopping. But now, anywhere I'm at is plug in a heavy-duty Makita circular saw and mill up a bunch of lumber or square it up and run drills. And it tickles my fancy having the ability to put and the guy that was here did leave a lot of very robust tools. I mean, he's got a Hitachi sawzall that, I don't know if it's 12 or 30 amp into the thing, is a two-hander. It's a lot of motor, a lot of power.
Yeah.
cut through whatever you want to cut through, whether you're cutting off metal roof or lumber or whatever.
Huh.
And so he had graciously left a lot of that behind when they left. And it gets very nice treatment. One of the few things that stays dry all the time.
Hmm.
Most of the time.
Yeah. Wow. So the hydro is enough to, or it's constant, but it's not enough to keep everything running at the same time, basically.
I guess, and he had a very robust system, but had lived so long without power that he wasn't using any of it. He brought in these big lead acid, like forklift truck batteries, and there were 8 of them, huge battery bank. And he had 6 solar panels that were up, and and he came inside. He had this one LED light that was 12 inches long, maybe 10, 20 little LED lights, and that was kind of lighting in the house. And I don't think he had refrigeration. They had a huge shunt, so he made this huge dehydrator. And when the storage system was full and more electricity was being produced, it ran through a battery management system and would dump that power into this huge waffle iron that was attached to this 4 foot by 3 foot tall face with maybe 2.5 feet deep, and he put these metal screens in there, and there'd be like 20 or 30 of these metal frameworks. And I think he would put his cocoa beans and temper them in there. So it was this huge dehydrating thing that primarily is using up all the power, and so essentially it would just dump heat up the little turbine house when he wasn't running his little LED light. So obviously he had the power to run power tools, and he was doing all that cocoa stuff. So maybe all that power was going into his fermenting and milling and grinding, and so yeah, I guess that explains it. But still, it seems like you have a few more lights around in the refrigerator, and they had no septic tanks either. They were 5-gallon buckets and fertilize. So one of the first things we did when we came in is we put in a septic tank at each place and ran some power.
Man, so he was living very rustic.
Yeah, well, like I said, they lived in a tent for a couple of years, so they're tent capable. And then when we got here, we this room that I'm in now is a big concrete addition that back faces the main house, and actually is probably will keep that house stable for a very long time. I mean, it provides support. They're kind of fused together, and then we built a hurricane shelter that is 3 bunks, and it's a 8-inch thick cast concrete. Not sure where I came up with these ideas, but the local people enjoyed the work, and yes, yeah, if you want to pour concrete walls, we can do that, and just get a bunch of guys, we'll mix cement. But it's like it is more of a compare with cement boat. I mean, that whole unit could, if there was an earthquake, it may drift down the hill, but it would drift as a unit. And then inside it's got, I put in 5/8 copper clad grounding rods and large 50-gallon steel drum that's bolted to that copper element that goes through the floor, and it's got copper lining, so it's in case there's a coronal mass ejection or other such sources of electromagnetic pulse. The stuff in there is triple wrapped. It's a coating of tinfoil, a coating plastic, coating tinfoil, coating the plastic. So there's a lot of reserve electronic, management devices and inverters, and so there's a bunch of stuff that is in a coronal mass ejection resistant. I like to say proof, but never want to say proof, but strongly resistant.
Yeah. Wow. And the solar panels that you have
Mhm.
and the batteries that you have. So now, because the hydro provides whatever amount, percentage wise of what you need.
And it turns that's another whole big story. The fellow that kind of was setting it up for Frank is a very good friend, and he came out from Texas to his wife got a job there, and but he came out to help us kind of put the new equipment in place, and um, he brought in these um, very sophisticated battery management systems, and there's one for solar and one for hydro, and uh, there was a previous quite expensive inverter type setup that did that, but this new system seems much more robust. I mean, we can't outrun it. Like I said, I saber saw, circular saw, lights. We now cook on electricity, so we don't have to haul in propane. And so the guy brought along this double burner induction electrical stove, and we do a majority of our cooking on that.
Yeah.
Which is nice because I mean, getting a propane tank up that hill.
Yeah.
One time we carried it up, or not Kyle carried it up, and it's like, and those things are full. It's a steep hill for me to walk up. Yeah, I get myself up there. I consider that a miracle. So it's real nice to kind of be all electric. And the next fantasy is to get an electric oven, because our oven is still propane, and so for baking. But we do a lot of bread making in pans now with the cooktop, and then make those Indian type things are around kind of a double layer bread thing, like a naan. It's like a
Yeah.
naan bread, and we'll make a stack of that, and put breakfast toppings on them in the morning, and fill them with vegetables in the afternoon at lunch, and because we can cook them on electricity, we're trying to veer, because we used to make a lot of bread in the oven. I mean, the kids are bread makers. Kristen and Kyle, they make all kinds of breads.
Hmm.
We're trying to adapt it to the cooktop at this point.
How much of your food how much do you have to buy still versus you're able to just eat
We buy we buy just because we have, we used to live in Northern California, and I used to make kind of high six-figure income, and so we have tastes. We have
Yeah.
spices and seasonings. So we will, and Kyle is actually a trained chef, so we got a fellow who has gone to school to cook and is really comfortable with all kinds of gravies and sauces and marinades, and so we eat like crazy good. But then along Maria came along, and we were isolated for several months, and so then we turned to lawn soup, and there's a lot of stuff that grows in the backyard. I mean, island cabbage I absolutely love. You can just use it for cabbage, put it into a acra, a little little bread cake thing, and I can kind of live on that. And we have a lot of turmeric, and like I said, the guy had a lot of coconut, a lot of pineapple, a lot of.
So if you needed to, you could survive on what's there on the property without buying it.
Yeah. We got chickens, and we got fish in the pond, and we're gonna try to bring in some tilapia and kind of beef up the fish pond. You swim in it a lot, and the little minnows that are in there, they'll nibble on you and pick off whatever little bugs they can find. So you're swimming around and they're kind of nibbling at you. So I'm a little fearful of throwing tilapia in there with a bunch of razor teeth. It's really, they come over and take your toe off or something.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa. So we've been reluctant to bring in a larger game fish. The ones that are there are short of having lots of small bones. prolific local indigenous, quite a few of those.
And is there actually like a growing season there, or is it just sort of you can grow all year round?
Yeah, you grow all year round.
That's awesome.
You're living in the middle of a tropical rainforest. I mean, the biggest problem is you're trying to keep the plants from covering your walkway to the chicken coop and from there to the turbine center and laundry area. I mean, you spend more of your time trying to clear, wild plant growth than shoveling snow.
Yeah.
Maybe the same amount as in January. If you're having a really heavy snowfall, that's how the plants grow around here. Kind of more or less live with a cutlass on your hip, and cutting down the limbs that are coming down from the trees. And I mean the plants that the local wild plants, you let them grow wild and they'll get 5 and 6 feet deep. And like when we go off into the side yard, you have to kind of take a belly smacker out and kind of smash the plants down and chop them at the root, to make a path through these robust grasses and things that are just indigenous.
So there's more of that than tending the food plants.
Yeah, and I'm really trying to pull away from the food plants and move to what grows out there, because there's so much that grows out there, and trying to talk to the local Kalinagos and ask them, what do they use, in a survival situation, or what do they use regularly? There's just so much out there. And then with all of Frank's stuff that he brought in that no one else can recognize. I mean, it's really quite unusual.
Yeah. You have some pictures you want to show?
I had managed to let me see. I'm gonna open it up and see if it's in the. Let's see. It's host disabled participant. Oh, you have to enable participant screen sharing.
Oh, did I not do that? Oh, there we go. Okay, now you should be able to.
Are you seeing my screen now?
No, not yet.
Let me see. So screen share.
Once you click screen share, then it'll give you an option of selecting the whole desktop or just one window.
Yeah. The desktop. And so this is actually from we have these kind of boxes in the greenhouse, but this actually was some history. This was some plants I had when I was in Northern California.
Huge.
Yeah. And this is I had this good friend in Northern California, and he'd have to cut the plastic out of his greenhouses because the plants would grow right through.
Yeah, like 10 feet tall or more.
Yeah, they're. I mean, this, like I said, they're punching holes right through.
Wow.
And here's just a collection from people who haven't been. If there's people that are listening to this for the first time, you can go to YouTube and put in Dr. William Courtney, and there's a channel, and there's a lot of scientific information, a lot of different planting kind of variations in my. This was me. I was running for the United States Congress of all things.
Huh.
That would have been a disaster. And actually, the fellow in Northern California who was the representative really did not want me to run, because he was saying that they wouldn't like you and you wouldn't like them, and this would not be you'd go in there and end up having all kinds of problems.
Yeah.
And so he was actually actively opposing my my run for Congress. Nutraceutical potential of hemp cannabis seeds and sprouts. That's a very interesting article out of PubMed. And this is the link here for people that want to look into that. Anti-cancer effective endocannabinoids, kill cancer cells through some like THC. Most research is focused on anandamide. This would be the endocannabinoids, the ones that the body produces that cannabis mimics, which induce apoptosis rupture, which is rupture of the nuclear membrane of the cell. And they're finding that these are useful on neuroblastomas, lymphomas, prostate cancer, colorectal melanoma. And so this, anandamide is where cannabis gets its strength. It comes in and supports the functions of the endogenous cannabinoids. And so if there's one thing that everyone should start out studying and, almost included in your religious studies, meaning, daily, you really want to understand the endogenous cannabinoid system, because then you really begin to understand the benefit of the exogenous cannabinoids that come in from the plant. And here's interesting historical stuff. This 1975 antiemetic effect of delta-9 tetrahydrocannabinol patients receiving cancer chemotherapy. So New England Journal of Medicine back in the 70s was, talking about cannabinoids. And at that point, it's, anti-nausea. They didn't quite get into the fact that as an anti-neoplastic, they may be able to reduce the side effects of the chemotherapy if they would use the innate anti-neoplastic abilities of the plant rather than just using it as an anti-nausea medicine. Evidence-based medical benefits of THC. That's interesting. They could look up those natural new blogs. There's a whole link there to get to that article. It's pretty interesting, and it goes through different medical conditions and its role in epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, diabetes, Alzheimer's, asthma, analgesia, pain relief. So that's another good kind of jumping off point. And I think we said this one already, didn't we? That's one of my favorites. The nutraceutical potential of hemp seeds and sprouts. That really is kind of, what I've been doing for 15 years.
Yeah.
If you do a search, a Google search on Dr. William Courtney, it'll also bring up a lot of the history. Another cannabis microgreens hemp sprouted superfood. This is definitely where I'm at these days, and a lot of these will mention that they had reviewed a lot of the literature that I had put out there, but this idea that if you can hit that. And I believe it's not been reproduced yet, but I know there's studies kind of going currently that are trying to reproduce it, that between day 10 and 14, and the only question we're having is what is day one on that timeline? Is one when the seed first sprouts, or is day one when the cotyledon first appears? And I believe it given the historical nature of that initial research, that it probably was a ground-based study, and when that cotyledon broke the surface of the soil, I believe that is what they're going to call day one. And then you let it go 10 days from that point, and then you're going to begin into the first true leaves. And there's this, if it's reproducible, there's supposed to be a 4-day window on the cannabis microgreen, this small cannabis plant. Cannabinoids and prostate cancer, systematic relief, review of animal studies. This is also, major blockbuster article that uh, um, that is worth people's reviewing.
Mhm.
And you know, I'm most interested in it as a prophylactic, and my goal for humanity is if cannabis was dietary, then you wouldn't be waiting until you had loss of cell wall contact inhibition, is what converts a dysplasia to a neoplasia.
Yeah.
So if you can nip it in the bud, there's I think we mentioned maybe in the previous thing, the antigen presenting cell, the APC, very critically important white blood cell macrophage, and it monitors the body for abnormal cell growth. And so the antigen presenting cell is, it's just looking for aberration in nuclear structures. And if it detects, any sign of early dysplasia or dysplasia, its whole function in the immune system is to actually, as a macrophage, it bites off the antigenic surface marker on that aberrant cell, and then migrates and then presents that address to the immune system. So you have this monitoring system looking for aberrant cell growth, and it has the capacity to, once it identifies that, to take that, and then the local lymph node will send out antibodies. It'll send out T killer cells, T helper cells, T regulatory. So it'll launch the whole immune system that will go out and identify any early aberrant, so any dysplasia or any neoplasia if it happened to have snuck in and not been detected early. And then that system will rupture the nuclear membrane, evacuate the contents, and remove the cells. So the APC, if I had a single cell that I identify with in terms of its incredible value and its maturation, the maturation of that cell, its conversion from observant to active, is under the endogenous cannabinoid system. So here's this cell that's quiescent, monitoring, and it goes, whoa, I don't know what's going on there, but I do not like the look of it. For it to go from quiescent to active, meaning to reach out, capture the address, migrate, present, that system is under the cannabinoid system. And so cannabis, if it comes in and supports that maturation, activation of the antigen presenting cell, really gives me a mechanism by which to understand how cannabis is really useful as a cancer preventative measure, rather than just being used for nausea from chemotherapy.
Wow. Amazing plant.
Oh my God.
How much of it do you have growing on the property?
We're the country is limited in the number of plants. And actually, I met with the president, and we're looking to get a group of 3 or 4 Minister of Finance, Minister of Agriculture, a fellow who writes the laws, and I would like to kind of put together a group to kind of look at what Dominica wants to do with cannabis, and look at the surrounding countries and where they've gone with their dispensaries. And so we're looking to hopefully integrate non-psychoactive dietary as a special kind of regulation, and embed that in law that will preserve the right to use cannabis as food. You're 80, 90 years old, you're not really interested in the psychoactive effect, because life becomes pretty psychoactive at that age. Just with every breath, you're on the ragged edge. And so to distinguish the essential right to dietary cannabis apart from the psychoactive uses, and how much psychoactive material you can store, ship, hold, and that type of thing. So to try to preserve dietary distinct from recreational and then I'd like the island to be, like I said, to be identified internationally as a cannabis cuisine, meaning they've developed a lot of different dishes where, we've used to have cannabis meals back in Northern California where cannabis would be in every dish. And if its proportion and preparation is correct, there would be no flavor there. It would not be oh my God, I can taste cannabis, or that's kind of gassy. So developing a cuisine that used the living plant without producing a food that would be rejected by older folks and children and people sensitive to have a sensitive gag gag reflex.
Yeah.
That may be a little.
Do you have any pictures of the property?
I'm sure I do. We may have to have a repeat if we could also do a second. I mean, somehow I've been really pushing really hard on hurricane preparation over the last week or two, because we had a lot of floppy roofs, and with that 90-degree Atlantic Ocean, and when I hear that water's over 100 degrees around Florida, if the things that are suppressing hurricane structure, if those mitigate, there could be some mega storms this year. So I've been, because of how hot the oceans are, I've been cutting down all of my overhangs and tying together the rafters with boards to secure the structures, because we have a lot of a very large kind of chicken coop area, and that roof would have peeled right off. We had, the guy that had put it up initially, it's common that you would put like a 2 or 3 foot overhang so that you could walk around and stay dry in storms. And there's a real nice benefit of having that overhang. But you get a 135-mile-an-hour wind coming along, that's all the lip it needs. The local recommendation is a maximum of 12-inch of overhang. So I've gone and completely cut down all the large overhangs, and that's a project bigger than I thought it was.
Yeah.
Or cutting off all the rafters and making them fascias, and then screwing the metal down so that the thing is a tight unit. And I know I have photographs, but I'm not exactly certain.
That's all right. Yeah, we can do another one.
Yeah, we'll get a Dominican one, and I'll get up a lot of photographs of there, because I mean it's. I'll go up and catch some photographs of the hydro screen intake. It's a beautiful structure. It's a couple 100 feet up the hill. That's where the hydro screen is a very interesting structure. It allows all debris to kind of roll off of the face, and then the water is sucked in on a reverse maneuver. There's a term for that. I just spaced on it. It's some bizarre word that. And what that does is allow you to pull out water that has no sediment or debris in it. And so a pair of those 12-inch hydro screens is really what gives us all the water that we wash with, drink with, that runs the turbine. I mean, there's so much water that comes over that. And the fellow that had set up the system wanted me to create a diverter, because the current situation is the water runs out of the dam and down that screen, but it catches up a lot of air and a lot of turbulence, and so a lot of air and water mixture gets taken in.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, and so that we had he had built a diverter that was misplaced or removed, and so we're rebuilding that diverter, and that diverter will allow us to move the water undisturbed into a funnel and focus it over, so it'll follow it around the corner, and then put pure water onto the screen to eliminate the intrusion of air bubbles. And he thinks that'll produce 100 to 200% improvement in our power output at the turbine. if
Huh.
we get rid of the frothy intake water. So that's, I mean, it's a toss up. I'm trying to build a barrier around a major water intake up there, trying to rework the hydro screens, trying to screw down the roof of the coop. Then, just typical preparations. I don't know why it's just I hope it's not intuitive, but I just got this sense that someone's going to have a rough season when the first tropical storms are allowed to organize.
Yeah.
So
A lot of prep.
yeah, a lot of homesteading. I mean, you just want to keep that dang roof on there. All your tools are there, just there we go. But the chickens, I mean, it would a greenhouse roof. That's plastic, but it flops but it's well secured. So I'm thinking it will flop around, but would probably be okay because it's nailed solidly its entire length. But the metal catchments were in need of a lot of redress. That's our major homestead activity: is secure the roofs and then secure the water source. Because with those big tropical storms, you have major water coming down the hills. I mean, we have this little river that we built a bridge over a concrete structure. We didn't put up any handrails or guardrails. It's just a completely flush, but I mean, a solid chunk of concrete. I think it's like 10 inches with a ton of steel. And we had a large pickup at that point, and it was made so that water could go over the top and underneath it, because on a major tropical storm, the flood will be 30, 40, 50, 60 foot wide on a 12-foot bridge. I mean, it's coming at it from every angle, and
Wow.
it looks like a lake or an ocean just coming down. And trees will be in the mix. And the bridge is so overbuilt is if you snag a tree, you're going to really load it up. And it'll be a while before you'll be able to go down and cut it off and allow it to flow downstream.
Wow.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then and the hurricane shelter has got these ports that you can look out of, but I mean, you really want to get a firsthand view of 135 mile-an-hour winds, as long as you are not the recipient of any flying trees and stuff. You got to dodge the trees if you're gonna go for the full view.
Front row seats, huh?
Oh my God, yeah. That's, I mean, we do, and we got 8-inch, ports that we can close off, and 4-inch ports. And,
wow.
Look out at there, but then as soon as the storm is over, you race down to the ridge, one to bust off the limbs and trees, so you don't uproot that thing. But it's that bridge is like, I'd almost be impressed if that thing could be. The supporting piers are so massive and dug so deep. I really think it would. I think it would weather just about anything. But 90-degree oceans test its mettle.
Yeah.
So if we disappear for a month or two, and that's the big thing. I mean, when I get enough money put together, I'm going to put up an 8-foot dish direct to satellite and do a constellation network connection. It's crazy expensive, given right now we got fiber optic, and it's very affordable to hook up to fiber optic, but they put aerial lines, and I kind of begged them to bury that stuff. I mean, because the aerial will just take out the fiber optic and it will be disconnected. And if when we get that 8-foot dish up, I was looking for some kind of a minimal service, like what is this? Can I get a trickle service just to keep the account open? And then, if we have a storm, be able to turn that on, and have a reserve bank account cover 2 or 3 months. That will allow us to shoot right up to a satellite and kind of reconnect and let people know, because Kristen's parents are kind of wondering what she's doing out here in the middle of nowhere. They actually came out to visit, which was pretty impressive. But but they were terrified coming up the driveway, and you know, they're all they just they're coming up the road like, oh, oh, oh. My daughter lives out here, you know, and it's, you know, we built the road, we put 400 yards of concrete in to just cover getting to the house, because for some reason this guy built it, you know, in the middle, really in the middle of nowhere, and they had to walk up this hill carrying in whatever they were going to eat. And
Wow.
but we put in 400 yards of concrete so we could drive in.
Yeah.
And yeah, but they're steep hills. I mean, you've got to have some good tires and a little bit of an engine, and hope there's not too much plant material laying all over it, because it's pretty slippery when it's sodden. But that's actually kind of the day's activities, is to go clear the driveway. If the Minister of Finance is coming for a house visit, I mean, it's unusual that it's kind of second, third in command. I mean, he's really a very strong political position, but is a physician of world-class proportions, and it is coming out to see us at the house. So we got to go out and clean the driveway. We can't let them think that we don't keep I mean, because since we don't have a vehicle, you know, it's a pretty narrow path. You just, you know, you got 12-foot wide concrete driveway that now is a walkway, you know. But if he's coming up here in his personal vehicle, you know, yeah, clear 3 or 4 feet of overgrowth on both sides of the road, so that he can see the road.
Wow.
Doesn't slip off of it.
That's funny. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, my friend, I need to
Yes.
get
Yeah.
to work,
Stuff to take care of.
so
Yes, and let me know. I'll get a Dominica photographic tour up, and we'll do this again sometime.
yeah, that'd be wonderful. And maybe we could talk about grounding at some point too. That'd be fun.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah,
'cause
the beds are all there, and we're definitely into it. The other two are pretty much into raw feed. You know, I'm in the chicken coop, which is pretty thick with a lot of material, and
yeah,
I cruise through that all the time, and I tend to kind of, you know, there's nails that drop, and there's, you know, you particularly, I got baby's feet, you know, they just get ripped up.
yeah.
I'm a bit of a boot man, but I'm trying to grow up. Everyone else keeps encouraging me, you know, take those boots off, get to the earth. Yeah, I'll lay down on it in the grass, and we'll talk for hours. I'll just stay right there while we'll meditate together.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, get to work.
Thanks, brother. It's wonderful to catch up with you. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll talk soon.
Thank you for everything.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Talk soon. Thank you.
Namaste.
Bye.